Can you name all 6 taste sensations? Or do you get stuck after sweet, sour, salty, and bitter? What are those last 2? And where is pain? Is it in the source of the injury? Or is it in the brain? Because if the pain messages don't get to the brain and you don't feel pain, would that change your answer? We're going to finish up sensation today talking about the rest of our senses, starting with hearing and then moving on to taste, smell, and our sense of touch. We left off in the last video talking about visual transduction and the process of taking light waves and turning them into something our brain can understand. Sound waves work in a similar fashion. We are taking these waves and these waves are going to enter into our ear and be turned into something that our brain can make sense of as well. When we talk about hearing, there are different things that we can perceive. The pitch comes from that length of the sound wave, the same way that the width of a light wave impacts what color we see. The amplitude in a light wave allows us to perceive brightness. The amplitude in a sound wave allows us to perceive the loudness of a sound. So loudness and pitch perception are going to be the 2 things that we focus on what we can hear. Now that information is going to enter into our ears through our ear canals, and eventually it's going to make its way to the inner part of our ear known as the cochlea. The cochlea is this spiral-shaped part of our ear that contains specialized cells called hair cells. When sound waves hit these cells, those cells are going to fire and send that information up into our brain. That's where the transduction process is taking place. This is why wavelength and amplitude start to matter. As those sound waves make their way through our ear, because of the different distances between the waves, they're going to hit different parts of the cochlea. And that is what allows us to perceive the different pitches of different sounds. This is called place theory. Essentially, if we were to unroll the cochlea, every spot on the cochlea is responsible for a different pitch. So those sound waves are going to hit at a specific spot to allow us to hear that specific sound. Now, what happens if that sound hits and fires, and just like all other cells, needs to go through a refractory period before it can fire again? When we hear sound sustained, we don't hear breaks in sound, and that's due to the volley principle. The volley principle tells us that as one cell is firing, nearby neurons can fire in rapid succession, so that allows us to hear sound as continuous, because as one cell is firing, the other one is going through its refractory period, a nearby neuron can then pick up the slack. And then frequency theory helps to explain for some low-pitched sounds that don't have a specific place on the cochlea. For those sounds, instead of a specific area that is going to be hit, the entire membrane at the bottom of the cochlea is going to vibrate at the same rate as that low-pitched sound. So between place theory and frequency theory, we can hear a wide variety of different pitches of sounds. And with the volley principle, we can hear sound for a continued period of time. The other piece that's important with sound is sound localization. Because we have 2 ears, those waves that are entering into our ears can reach our ears at different times depending on where the sound is coming from. So if you close your eyes, you can tell where sound is coming from via your left, your right, or somewhere in between, based on the time that it takes that information to reach one ear versus the other. And just like with vision and different types of color blindness, there's also different types of deafness that can take place in the auditory process. Conduction deafness is when there's damage to some part of the middle ear. So that could be something like damage to the eardrum or the pistons that are attached to it. Sensory neural deafness is where there's damage somewhere in the inner ear. Those hair cells that transduce those sound waves or something else in the cochlea could be disrupted that prevents us from being able to hear. In both cases, there are some things that can be done to help someone with their hearing. Hearing aids are often used for conduction deafness, and cochlear implants can be used for that sensory neural deafness. For our remaining senses, there are a couple of different things we want to know. Taste and smell are referred to as chemical senses because they are going to be taking in actual chemical information and then transducing that into, again, something our brain can understand. When it comes to our sense of smell, or olfaction, the way that transduction takes place is through odor molecules that enter into our nose and attach to our olfactory bulb. They're different size molecules for different size odors, and as those molecules attach to the receptor sites, different combinations will be activated that allow us to perceive different scents in our brain. What's very unique about the sense of smell, however, is that it bypasses the thalamus. It is the only of our 5 senses that does not go to the thalamus first to then be routed to wherever it needs to go. And because it just sort of goes directly up into our brain, it ends up near our limbic system, by our amygdala and our hippocampus. Smells are often associated with mood and memory as a result, which also helps us to be able to recognize smells and pinpoint what they remind us of. So we can smell chocolate chip cookies and know what they are, or a specific kind of perfume that reminds us of our grandmother. We can also smell something called pheromones, which are chemical substances that are released by organisms to communicate with others of the same species. And psychologists believe that pheromones play a key role in attraction in humans. When it comes to our sense of taste, which is also referred to as gustation, is this also going to be a chemical sense because we are going to have food particles that are being trapped inside of these buds in our tongue that allow us to perceive the different flavors. Now, the bumps on your tongue are not actually taste buds. Taste buds exist within those bumps, and there are many of them within each individual bud. There are 6 taste sensations that we have. As we mentioned before, sweet, sour, salty, and bitter are the ones that we are most familiar with. But there are actually 2 newer taste sensations that are also recognizable, and those are umami, or savory, and oleogustus, which is fat. Umami, or savory, is like the flavor of meat. It is detected by receptors that are responsive to things like amino acids and glutamate that we see in a lot of meaty types of flavors. And oleogustus is the taste sensation of fat. It's detected by those specific receptors for the richness or creaminess of food. So even things like avocado are being detected by oleogustus taste receptors. Now, some people can differentiate between tastes better than others, and that is because some people are super tasters, others are medium tasters, and some people are non-tasters. And super tasters are people with a heightened sensitivity to taste. Medium tasters and non-tasters are going to have varying degrees of sensitivity to taste stimuli. And there are actually differences in the number of taste buds on someone's tongue that contribute to whether or not someone is a super taster or not. And it seems to have a genetic component to it. Smell and taste, both being chemical senses, are often discussed together, but it's also because of sensory interaction. These two play a key role in working together and helping us to perceive things that we can taste. Without our sense of smell, our sense of taste is severely depressed. We are not able to taste things as well if we're not able to smell them. And last but not least, we have our sense of touch. And with our sense of touch, there are going to be a variety of different receptors in our skin that respond to various stimuli, such as warm and cold receptors that respond to different temperature stimuli, and other receptors that will respond to pressure, and other ones that will respond to pain. Now, when it comes to pain, the question is, where does pain take place? Is it in our injury, or does it take place in our brain? One of the popular theories when it comes to understanding how pain works is gate control theory. And what gate control theory says is that there are 2 pathways in our spinal cord for the transmission of information. There is a sort of wide pathway where a lot of information can travel, including information down to our body. And then there is a smaller pathway where things like pain are going to be sent up into the brain. If there are competing messages going in and out of our brain, let's say you are running in the woods from a bear and you twist your ankle. Because your brain is also sending information out to your body about this emergency taking place and telling you to run away, it can close the gate to those pain receptors because it's not perceived as being important at this point in time. It allows someone to not feel that pain that they should be experiencing until after the emergency is over. Once that is done and there's no more competing messages, the gate will open back up and someone might feel the pain that they were previously able to ignore. And some people will actually feel pain where a limb used to be as well, and that's referred to as phantom limb pain. And that is a sensation when an amputated or missing limb still feels like it is attached to the body. Again, indicating that some of that processing of our sense of touch is taking place in our brain as opposed to in the source of the injury. Other things that we can process through our sense of touch and through our sensory cortex include our vestibular sense, which is our sense of balance, and that actually comes from our ears. Inside of our ears, there is a structure called the semicircular canals, and they are filled with fluid. So when you move your head back and forth, the fluid is going to move along with it and tell you where your head is in relation to the rest of your body. If you spin around in a lot of circles or go on a roller coaster, that fluid will be moved around and can contribute to the dizziness that you feel afterwards. And finally, there's kinesthesis, and that is your sense of body position and body movement. Can you close your eyes and take your hands and bring them together so that all of your fingers touch? That is your ability to move your body and understand where it is in space, and that comes from our kinesthetic sense. So those are our other senses and how they're processed. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the way that your body takes information in from your senses and sends it on up into your brain. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember, be kind to your mind.